flag. That's a flag. Awesome drive, man. Awesome drive.
It's nice to close out a race like that. That was awesome.
This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to 2023 season episode 36 of the Team Blaney Podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. As always, this podcast is brought to you by fans for fans. Steve and I have been following the drivers of the Blaney racing family for 2 decades, and Team Blaney itself launched on social media in 2014. Each weekly episode of the podcast offers an in-depth analysis of Ryan Blaney's latest NASCAR Cup Series race, plus news, notes, and a lineup of special guests all throughout the year. This week, we break down the number 12 team's run in the Yellowwood 500 this past Sunday at Talladega Superspeedway. Steve, welcome back. You're just done barnstorming across the country after attending this race at Talladega, and I bet it has put you in a good mood.
His run, how about just his win? The way you put that at the beginning. It was
true.
Yeah, his win.
Spoiler.
Spoiler, if you haven't seen yet, restart the podcast. My wife says to me, she says, he's won 9 races at the Cup level now. We've seen 3 of them live. So we're going to start a GoFundMe page tomorrow so that next season we go to all 36, and if he wins 33% of those, what's that make it? 12 wins next year. So we're going to have to start this GoFundMe page now, I think. And if you people want him to win 12 races next year, we'll go to all 36, for you and make sure he wins 12, It's a pretty good percentage.
Myself, on the other hand, I point out to people is that this is the 3rd win where we were very close to going to the race and we didn't go, being his win at Atlanta, his win in the Coca-Cola 600, and now this win at Talladega. We were all on the fence that Friday before the race. Yes or no. We stayed home, and he's won 3 times. We did get to see him win that one time with you at Daytona, but since then, all the races we've kind of waffled on, stayed home at, he has ended up going to victory lane. So maybe it could be a split GoFundMe. Steve and Kate go. Adam and Tara have to stay home.
Have to stay home. Part of the GoFundMe, they buy you a bigger TV or something so you can, or a couple extra ones so you can watch all the action, But the trip was excellent. I mean, we were only going down there for Sunday. We travel about 3/4 of the way. We never really get a hotel anywhere real close to the track. It just gets way too expensive. So we stay a certain distance out where the prices are a little more reasonable. We try to get there early to get in early, and then we usually like to make the tweet up too. Bob was I think just Bob this time. Well, he might have had Kelly Crandall with him, I think. And they do a great job with the tweet up. Good crowd there for it. Actually, he told a great story about Talladega Nights because they had show cars there for Old Spice and Wonder Bread, and they had a huge hot air balloon for Wonder Bread. And he told a story about Will Ferrell because I guess when the movie came out for like a month straight, Will Ferrell went to every race to help promote it. And when he was doing this, after week after week after week, I guess Bob walked into an extremely crowded press room at one point and goes, "Is that Will Ferrell here again?" And he said Will was like 2 people away from him over the side, and he probably heard him, but he couldn't quite tell where it came from, But that was a really cool thing this weekend to see once we got there. But decent crowd. I don't think it was actually packed, but a decent crowd. Weather was perfect, which means you guys didn't come.
Yep, that's the other thing.
I have to hammer you on that because you texted me at one point. I says, I knew you weren't coming because the forecast didn't change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're not. There's something about you're like Charlie Brown there for the weather. It just follows you. Yeah, everything overall was great. Looking forward to the whole thing, and then the execution Sunday, what we'll talk about here, was unbelievably great. I made the trip back even better, because that's all we talk about on the whole trip back was what a great day we had on Sunday.
Yeah, these are absolutely my favorite episodes of the year. Our first season, Ryan breaks out and gets 3 victories, the first year that we ever did the podcast. And then last year, super consistent, had a lot of success that didn't include wins except for the win in the All-Star race, which that was a great episode after that. Mm-hmm. And now this year we've had some time a little bit. He wins the Coca-Cola 600, gets that crown jewel victory, breaking that winless streak that they had for several races. He was really excited to win that race. We had a bit of a stretch here over the summer where things kind of slowed down a little bit. They made some mistakes. They didn't execute all the way. But as soon as these playoffs have kicked off, outside of a speeding penalty that he had last week, the last week's race was being executed to perfection until that time. They've really turned it up for the playoffs. And we have went and pulled down the audio from Ryan's press conference. So we're going to be playing a lot of clips from him and Roger Penske and Jonathan Hassler a little bit later on the show. So make sure you stay tuned for those if you haven't heard any of those since Ryan's win on Sunday. So lots of cool stuff coming up, but the only way to get there is to jump into our race recap here. And thank you, Steve. I know you've been on the road all day. You got home, you kind of went through and took some quick notes from yourself, rewatching some things and looking through some of the NASCAR.com stuff. If this is your first time listening, Steve does a really awesome job every week of listening to the scanner, watching TV, watching the in-car camera, taking notes all race long. We really give you a super in-depth breakdown of the strategies and the pit stops and everything that happened throughout the race. On these recaps of super speedway races in general, things happen so fast and there's so many passes, and usually crashes are kind of the only crazy things that go on. These recaps are usually a little bit shorter. So that paired with you being there live at the track, it might be a little bit different, but we still have a lot of cool stuff to talk about. And that starts off with qualifying, but no practice.
No practice. Yeah. Your favorite. I think Denny Hamlin actually made fun of the fact that they were even qualifying over the weekend, because he's, same thing. I mean, we're going to just line them up and see where we end up on Sunday. But actually, Saturday, it goes pretty well. The first, they do one whole round. Everybody goes once. And Ryan put it P5 for that. So he went out. They invert that when they go for the pole. And so he went out, I think, sixth there for the pole. But did not get that great a lap in. I don't know if the cooling the cars off and getting him back out there. Not sure what happened, but he ends up going to start 10th. The 10 car ends up with the pole, and what do we have? 8 Fords in the top 10 to start the race. So all the Fords showed off their muscle during that. I guess there was an adjustment made by NASCAR where they made it so they couldn't adjust those cars quite the way they did. You know how they were yawed out a little bit there.
Oh, that kind of skew that they showed up with a couple of times this year. Yep. Yeah.
I guess the talk in the garage was that the NASCAR told them they couldn't do that anymore. So this qualifying was a little bit different, a little more where everybody was in the same box again. So that advantage that a couple teams had found was taken away, which was probably going to make the racing better, to tell you the truth, because everybody's back under the same rules again. We get to race day. We got stages of 60, 120, 188, 7 sets of tires, and pit stall 41, which is the last stall on pit road from front to back. Or my wife and she might be right there. She says it's the first stall on pit road, because when you think about it, it's the first one you get to as you're coming down pit road. And this ends up being quite an advantage, actually. Because like they come down to pit road, they slow down right away to pit road speed, but to get to the box, they don't have to go through like anybody else's box. They can go straight to it. Don't have to go around anybody. All they can do is stop short if they have to go around the car in front of them. So, fuel run of 40 to 43 laps roughly. And when we start this race, of course, Ryan starts out in the high line with the even number starting position. By about lap 10, he has moved to the low lane, and within a couple laps there, he gets behind the 22. And this is kind of where he wants to be. There's a lot of talk before the race about the 22 and the 2 helping Ryan. And he gets up to about 3rd or 4th position here. And it kind of goes back and forth as the lanes move a little bit in front of each other. The high lane might move up a little bit. The low lane might move up next lap. So it ends up being 3rd or 4th. By lap 18, though, the field does get 3 wide. And once again, in parentheses, I put fuel conservation. There are the 2 lanes that are moving. The low lane and what ends up being the middle lane are basically trying to back up into each other. And Ryan even talks about throttle trace at one point on the radio, because he kind of wants to know if he's doing a good job, because the more fuel they save, the less time they got to spend on a green flag pit stop, or any pit stop, actually getting fuel. And the less time they do that, the more track position they can gain. So, but what this does is it creates a third lane, because some of the guys get out of line, out of those two lines, try to race a little bit and get that third lane up on the top going. And all of a sudden it gets a little more racier, but everybody's still doing the same thing with fuel conservation as best they can. The guy in the front's the guy that's kind of screwed a little bit, because he's out in front, and you can still save fuel from the front, as we learned in the spring race, but you've really got to back up into people, and not worry about leading as much. You lead your lane, but not necessarily lead the race. Lap 34 here. The low lane gets kind of moved back a little bit. Ryan gets back to about 10th place at this point. Lap 38, the Ford's pit. Now, this is part of it too. That lane moved back because they were trying to shuffle, and certain guys were trying to get in position, so they were in that low lane because they knew they were going to come to a green flag pitting here. And the Ford's pit on lap 38. And this is a 5-second pit stop. There's no tires involved. Matter of fact, somebody online said, why didn't they put tires on? Because it only takes a certain amount of time. But no, this is fuel only. These tires are good till, a certain number of laps. You don't want anybody having to run around the front end of the car to put a tire on, even though it might only take 5 seconds to do that. And actually later on, there's pit stops even faster. So we get the Chevys pitting on the next lap, and the Toyota's pitting at lap 42. And while this is going on, they do kind of merge back to each other at some point, but the Fords did such a good job that they end up near the front of all three of the manufacturers here. So when it cycles complete at lap 43 here, Ryan's up to second, and for the next bunch of laps, he kind of gets between second and fifth as the lanes kind of move a little bit. Lap 49, we get the 47 in the high lane, and the 2 is in the low lane with Ryan pushing him. And this is where the fun happens as we're getting closer to the end of the stage here.
I know Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's won multiple races at super speedways. He always finds a way to the front. But man, this is like the most out of control consistently I've seen him. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if some of it was Kyle Busch at points here was pushing the 47, maybe he's pushing him a little bit too hard, but I thought disaster could strike basically at any moment. I'm not sure how you could perceive that at the racetrack, but on TV, the way they can have the camera angles from above and right in front, like that car was all over the place. Yeah, and it made me just so nervous with where Ryan was running, because I'm like, if he does spin, is he going to come down and hit Ryan and hook him too, or will Ryan scoot by? I mean, that's all that's going through my head during this whole sequence.
I don't know these cars are a little loose and a little tight. They may have a slight adjustment here or there usually on a super speedway, but he looked really loose. He looked wild. Like when he took a push, like it looked almost like he had to save it a couple different times. Yeah.
The other thing to mention here too, and they brought now this is going to come into play in your race report in a little bit. They brought it up on TV. Cindric was on the inside, I believe, for most of that, and they're showing his throttle trace, and he was off the gas a lot, moving back into Ryan, let Ryan kind of push him. 47 was full throttle like the whole time out there on that outside lane. So this will come into play in mere moments, I'm sure.
In mere moments, yeah. I was going to say lap 60. Let's get to the end of the stage here. And it basically happens, somewhere around the backstretch. Ryan pushes the 2 way out there, and the 2 does something we all hoped he would do. He goes ahead and gets in front of the high lane. And I don't want to say the word block, but he
lost his drafting help.
Yeah, he kind of.
That's what happened.
Exactly. That's what happened. He lost his drafting help, and he was trying to cover the high lane, and he covered the high lane so good that Ryan moved past him on the low lane. Ryan, as they go through 3 and 4, Ryan ends up out to the lead, and then we have the accident that happens in 3 and 4 with what we got, the 47. I'm sorry, the 1, the 1, the 20, and the 8 were actually involved. I think the 47 was near it, and this is part of what
caused it.
So, and the 1 gets smashed up he's done for the day pretty much with that. The 8 car takes a little damage. The 20 takes some damage that they end up fixing as the day goes on. But
yeah,
the caution comes out before they actually get to the line, and Ryan wins stage 1.
Yeah, but that was awesome. But yeah, I was mentioning Stenhouse going, full throttle this whole time because he does lose fuel, he loses fuel pressure, backs up. The 8 and the 47 kind of go up into the fence. The 1 tries to scoot 4 wide, basically 3, he was 3 out of the 4 wide and gets clipped and goes into the fence and hits the 20. So it messes up a few people's days by the way the 47, they just didn't take enough fuel on their stop, which part of the reason why they're able to get back out front again, went full throttle that whole time. But shout out to Austin Cindric, as you said. Last year we gave the teammates from what happened in the Daytona 500 to what happened. It's funny, the first race and last race really, to what happened all the way in the championship race. We're kind of bemoaned a little bit the whole teammate racing, and Ryan's has always been basically the perfect teammate all along. When would this kind of come full circle? But you could tell between the 22, there's a point, I don't know if it was already passed or later on in the race, where the 22 was in the lead, and Ryan was inside and the 22 kind of went up high, and they kind of did what they like to do, which is kind of control both lanes. But if it was anybody other than Ryan was in the bottom lane, Logano would have been bouncing back and forth between the 2 lanes blocking. But he didn't, because Ryan's down there. So kudos to Joey at that point. Kudos to Austin Cindric, who really helped the 12 win that stage, which at that point in the race, this is before we know he wins, getting that stage or that playoff point was huge. Getting those 10 stage points was huge for a guy that entered this race 11 points below the cut line. So
we're texting at one point, talking about back and forth at that moment. We were texting you about, that's 10 points to the, and only 2 or 3 other cars that were playoff cars took stage points there. Most of that top 10 was guys that are out of the playoffs. So it was funny about the 2 doing what it did is I thought the 2 is what actually caused the accident at first, because you see him cover that lane, and then you realize, you find out what happened with the 47, and you realize that the 47 is the guy who ran out of gas, and, the 2 really didn't back up as far as we think he did. And actually, if it would have came to the front stretch, he'd have probably still been leading that lane, and guys would have tried to have to bail around him maybe, but, which would have helped Ryan too.
Yeah. The other good thing that happened was just that crash happened. Well, it's not great that a crash happened, but there were some Hendrick cars lined up on the bottom behind Ryan. So they would have also maybe pulled out in the tri-oval trying to pass too. So you never know what will happen. Luckily it didn't happen, and the 12 team picks up that stage victory.
Yeah. So pitting here, everybody's pitting 4 tires, and they're waiting on fuel. Okay, so anytime they do a 4-tire stop here in the race, they got to wait on fuel, got to get it full so that if they go green the whole next stage, they can take that short fuel only. And what's great about this is it's a 13.180 second stop. And normally you go, what? What do you mean what's great? They came in first, they went out first. So that tells you that 37 other cars also had 13 plus second stops, also doing the same exact thing. They had to fill the tank up. If you're doing this right, you got to fill it up and hope that you can only put a couple seconds worth in on the green flag stop later on. So restart at lap 66 with the low lane here, and really not a lot is happening. But by lap 81, the low lane has gotten moved back a bit. And, Ryan's gotten shuffled a little bit. He's back to 10th. I think at lap 87 is where we have this issue where he kind of gets sucker holed. A couple people end up going around him. He didn't cover a move, basically. And when this happens, he just kind of gets caught in the middle and kind of moved to the back and goes all the way back to 22nd at that point.
Yeah. If I'm remembering correctly, he was back on the outside lane, had made his way kind of back toward the front. And I think if this is the right time, the 8 car tried to go out to the outside lane. I don't know if he was trying to cover the third lane that was coming or not, but Ryan went out to try and block it. And I think the 8 shot back down in. Ryan didn't have enough time to get back down in line. And in his post-race press conferences and some other stuff, he mentions the one mistake they made all day was that. And I think even on the radio, he said, how did we He said we, so I don't know if he just means everybody, team, spotter. Like, how did we miss that? Like,
Missed
that
it,
opportunity to get back in. So a little moment of frustration, probably one of the few moments of frustration in this entire race. And just kind of free falls after that and hangs around the back. And even towards the end of this stage makes me a little nervous because he starts to drive back up through again, and like into what I would call the hornet's nest. But
he does a good job by the end of the stage.
But maybe they felt good about getting those 10 stage points in the win earlier, that if something does happen, at least we have that to fall back on. I'm sure they had all that time. He had all that time to think about that when he's traveling 190 miles an hour.
Yeah, a lot of deep thoughts going on there. Lap 105, we start some green flag pitting with the Toyotas. They actually lead off this time. And the next lap, the Fords cover it. And I have on the NASCAR app, it says this stop is a 3.170 second stop. Later on is a 4-second stop, but this one's 3.170.
Here's the reason for that. So the downside to getting shuffled, obviously, is losing all your track position and going to the back. Mm-hmm. The plus side in this type of race, which a lot of these have become fuel mileage races now, is he could save a crazy amount of fuel. Mm-hmm. So when they came in to do this pit stop, and even the next pit stop later in the race, because of their fuel saving abilities, it could be really super short.
Yeah. Lap 107, the Chevys end up pitting, but lap 115, he's 24th here with all this, everything coming back together. So that's 24th with 5 laps to go in the stage. Okay. But at the end of the stage, the 2-car wins the stage, Keselowski wins stage 2. Ryan ends up 12th. So in 5 laps, he gained 12 positions, and who knows, if they really
a lot of it was even just on the last lap of that stage. He went in that outside lane. He went 3 wide with everybody else. They got a huge amount of momentum, and he was so close to stage points. Now, I think you mentioned he finishes 12th. I think in reality, after what happens in post-race tech, I think he bumps up to 11th, 11th in this stage because of a DQ that happens. But it was so close to being able to rally there for stage points. But that does help setting up this next stage, gives them a little bit more track position going into this next sequence. Yeah, so they're pitting here, 4 tires and fuel, going in 12th, coming out 9th. And that's with a 13.747 second stop. So once again, everybody's got to do fuel and wait there. We're all waiting on fuel. We have a restart lap 126 with the 22 leading the field to the green. At lap 140, the low lane is shuffling a little bit, and they're back a little bit. It's 3 wide. He's back to about 15th at this point. Like I said, everybody's kind of conserving fuel, and that's why they got 3 wide. But by lap 140, somewhere between 147 and 149, he's in that low lane, and it moves up, and he moves all the way up to 3rd with that lane. I think he was pushing somebody at that point, but he gets that lane all the way up there. We get a caution at lap 163 here for the 42 and the 2 incident. The 2, the Keselowski ends up being the 6. Yeah.
Why did I say 2?
I think he's still
in the 2. In my head, he's still in the 2. Yeah.
I knew what you meant.
Thank you. And the 42 and the 6, and he says that in an interview that, hey, it's kind of what it is, so that, because somebody asked him, should he be pushing Carson like that? And he made something to the effect of, hey, you're going to have to learn somehow.
Yeah, he mentioned that the 42 had jumped up in front of him to try to catch the momentum of the outside lane, and Brad basically was like, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to push. And Austin's Dillon, who got caught up and was out of the race in this crash, did not appreciate that. And now Austin's another one of those drivers who is aggressive on speedways, but has also been wildly successful in these types of races too. So he knows. I think he has the clout to make some of the comments that he made, but he basically said Brad shouldn't have been pushing him, which I think maybe he was pushing him in the tri-oval possibly when that occurred. But Carson went to school real quick. He was having a good race. I mean, honestly, all the races he's filled in this year in that 42 car have been pretty spectacular for somebody running their first Cup races. So kudos to him until it wasn't. He couldn't take a push though. obviously.
No, not that point. We had about a 10-minute delay here, red flag, while they clean this up, make sure the safer barrier is back in place properly. They pit here. For fuel only. This is a 4-second stop. I think this is the Pyrotech pit stop of the race. They were in 6th coming into the pit stop, out 4th. So that gained, a couple more spots up there. Restarting at lap 169. A couple laps later, we get a caution for the debris. Again, there was still some debris out there from something must have fell off a car or something. So we're up to 2nd at this point, though. So we're restarting at lap 176 now. P2 on the outside, 48 on the inside. Right before the restart here, Riley Herbst is the guy pushing Ryan, and we might hear this later on in clips. I'm not sure, but Riley. First off, Riley at Daytona a couple weeks ago, he looked a little bit wild. But his pre-race interview on track that we got to hear was pretty interesting because he's talked about learning and trying to learn, and he's getting to do these things. And this race, he looked like he's already learned some lessons, and he's gotten better and better at it.
Josh, I'll say he was wild at Daytona, but he also ran up front. So if you just put that learning and that together, maybe that's where they got to here.
Yeah, and what happens here before they get to this restart is Josh, knowing that 36 is behind him on the choose, the next, as they're coming around to the lap to start, he asks Ryan, "Is there anything I need to tell the 36?" And I think it's Brian Keselowski is actually Riley's spotter, and Ryan goes through a couple things that are basically super speedway type things about where to push and where not to push or whatever, and then says at the end of it, he says, "Besides that, bring it on." And when I heard that, I was like, oh, yeah, he's ready for whatever's going to happen the next, bunch of laps from here to the end. So really kind of cool to hear that out of Ryan. So we restart at lap 176 here. And, the 48 in that low lane, he helps organize basically the Hendrick cards. The 24 ends up right behind him, by lap 177, all 4 Hendrick cars are on that low line. Ryan's actually pushing the 4 at this point in the high lane. He gets up there and he's behind Kevin. And at lap 181, he's pushing Kevin to the lead. And
it's like a Ford train versus a Chevy train, basically.
Yeah. So at lap 186, and we're the last two laps here, lap 186, the 4 drops to the low lane to block the 24. So now we've got Riley behind Ryan, pushing Ryan. And at lap 187, the 24 pushes the 4 way out. He's like, doesn't want him in front of him, pushes him way out. And this pretty much starts to happen as they go down the backstretch on this last lap. And this is where it gets just the highlights of this are just incredible if you watch them.
Yep.
Ryan is in the high lane. Like I said, the 4 car gets pushed way out in the low lane. He sees Ryan's got momentum and starts to try to block the high lane. As he does, there's so much room there that Ryan gets his run and starts to go below the 4, and the 4 does not make, he could have made a real dumb move and tried to block him and knocked him out and knocked everybody out. But the 4 holds his line. Ryan does actually get in front of the 24, and now he's racing with the 4 down the backstretch. And the great thing about this is once they get that, they're side by side. Ryan does not let the 24 get him way out of shape. He kind of backs up to him, takes the little bumps, backs up to him, takes the little bumps. And this is important because now the 4 car is racing next to Ryan, and he's keeping the 24 from making any kind of move. The 24 is pinned to the bottom. The line on the outside is now right next to the 24, so he can't get out of there to do anything, and he can't push Ryan far enough ahead because Ryan keeps backing up to him. And this is something that you will hear. I think we might end up hearing a little later on from Josh. Josh does a great job. Ryan, gets clear. He tells him he's clear as he gets there, and then he kind of tells him, to keep him lined up. And the next half a lap, you know, yeah, go
Let's
ahead.
just get to it. I'll go ahead. So you've described it really well. Let's hear. A fan has uploaded and we've shared it on our Team Blaney X Twitter page and elsewhere. It's a sync up of the spotter audio and Ryan's in-car video. It's of the last like 6.5 minutes of the race itself, but I'm gonna just go right to right where we hit to the white flag lap and right before Ryan makes this move on the backstretch that Steve just described. But let's hear how Josh was making the call from the spotter stand and how Ryan reacts. And actually, I think we're gonna take this all the way from the white flag to the checker, and then we can talk about the end.
If you're going to Twitter real quick before you hit that, it's Andrew is his name. It's at BASSO488. Andrew, and his Twitter handle's at BASSO488. And you want to go to that if you can. But go ahead, Aaron.
Half and tight, coming to the white. Still no top lane to worry about. Heat back to that. Just one inside. Back to you, then half off. White flagger. Still inside. 36 getting a push back to you on your bumper. He's getting pushed to 7 on you. Still just one inside, white flag there. On you, still inside. He's still getting pushed to 7. Off you now by half. Off by half and tight. So get pushed back to you here. Tight then tight. Coming back to the checker. Tight then tight. Tight then tight. You're getting pushed to 7 behind. So tight and tight. You're all clear. All clear, whatever you need. Outside just the 4, half back 24. 24 is going to get pushed in the 9. It's outside your door. 24 getting hard push on the bottom. It's outside your door. You're clear. Don't get that 24 clear. Half to the bottom 24. He is not clear. 24 is not clear. The 4 will pull him back. Half back both lanes. 24 is going to help his teammate. That 4 is help us off by half. Keep that 24 lined up. 4 still half to the top. Still half to the top. 24 or 4 coming back outside here. Outside. 24 going to get pushed to you. 4 is out by 1. Keep coming low here. Stay low, 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 low. Yes! Did we get it? Yeah, right, we got it. Woo! Oh my God! Let's go, man! Good job, Josh.
Good job, Ryan. Good job, Josh. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Riley, for working with me there. You did a really good job. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody. That's so cool, man. Congrats.
You know what that means. Good job, buddy.
Roundo 8, baby.
There you go. So, Steve, you just kind of described that. So, talk about the importance of what Josh was telling Ryan about where the 24 was, where the help was to the 4, and why it was so crucial that he doesn't let the 24 get clear of the 4, which is a mistake that a lot of guys make when they're leading these super speedway races at the end. They're so, convinced they need to stay out front, get as big of a lead as possible. But if they help their line clear the other line, there's an opportunity for somebody else to make a move.
Yeah, you can hear Josh as he talks about their first of all, how calm he remains during all of this is incredible. Watching the whole race as a whole with him, I get this every weekend, but there is a certain tone, and it's calming to, with all the chaos going on around. It's extremely calming the way he does this. When he says clear, whatever you need, basically he's told, Ryan had cleared the 24 at that point. But you hear him at one point talk about the 4 will pull him back. So what he's done by backing up and trying to keep anybody from pushing him too far out is he's making it so those 2 lanes are the only 2 lanes racing, that nobody else is like ducked out from behind somebody else, and this guy ducked out from behind somebody else, and that guy ducked out from behind somebody else, and spread everything out to 4 or 5 wide. And he's kept it so that he's getting his push and the 4 car is getting his push. Now, could it have been the 4 car that won at the end? Yes, it could have. We look at the margin of victory, 0.12. But what Josh has done there is really helped him with, knowing where everybody else around him. As you're listening to him, he's not just talking about the 24, but he's talking about the 9 car pushing. He also mentions, Riley ends up pushing the 4, but the 7 is also pushing Riley. And, and he mentions that too. So he's keeping, Ryan is somewhat driving with that rear view mirror too, but it's keeping him abreast of where the bumps are coming from, who's actually closing distance and moving what guy into what guy, because it kind of like, is a chain effect too. You're just going up the line. But just incredible how well he does that and helps Ryan to control, his line there and control the race so that when they do get to, the last couple hundred yards there, when they know it's, all out, that, and she's just going to get pushed from one guy and nobody's going to duck out from behind him. And it was just beautiful.
With that, Ryan picks up his 9th career victory in the Cup Series as far as points go. He does have a 10th win if you count the All-Star race. I think that was Team Penske's 141st victory in the Cup Series. This is the second time in Ryan's career that he's won multiple races in one season. So there's a lot of things to celebrate, and I definitely want to give a quick shout out to all these folks that have been guests on the podcast, with I think still more to come throughout this year and in the years to come. But Crew Chief Jonathan Hassler, Tire Specialist Dave Nichols, who we also call Mule, Engineer Tony Palmer, Spotter Josh Williams has been on with us multiple times throughout the years, and then obviously Ryan himself earlier on. Congratulations to every single one of them, plus everybody else on that, as they call the 1-2 crew. All the fans out there. Obviously, I know what was happening in my living room. And some of the things we've had to, bleep out a couple things in that spotter audio, which, I can't, Josh almost never curses, never goes crazy. But you can tell just the emotion of the moment kind of overcomes those guys. So I would say my living room was much like Josh's reaction and then Ryan's eventual reaction. How was it in the stands there? I know you're sitting up high, but near pit entrance. I'm guessing you're confirming. You're hearing it on the radio, Josh confirming the win. You're probably also watching the replay up on the board. Did you even have time to take in your surroundings, or were you kind of just caught up in the moment?
I know that somebody turned to me and gave me a fist bump or something, but I don't even know who it was. We grabbed each other. The wife and I grabbed each other in a huge hug. We let everybody around us know that he had won because they don't necessarily confirm it right away, but we've got confirmation because we're both sitting there listening to the radio. We got confirmation right away. And then we're hearing all those voices, getting on the radio there, Jonathan and Ryan. So yeah, we were just ecstatic, and we just kind of, sat there for a while, absorbed it all in. We were texting you. My in-laws had called my wife. We're messaging back and forth with, our big fan of the show, Justin Hughes, because he was down there. Yep. and he got himself into pit lane there. He had some the passes that I think they're the ones that you guys got last time you were there. So he got down to pit lane, was actually sending a picture up there to us, which was great. But we try to absorb all the ceremonies before we end up leaving the track. So which we needed to do because we were just riding quite the high, and the team, I tried to take pictures of things. Like I did get a picture out to you of the guys on pit road that jumped over the wall, and they're all celebrating with each other because we were right in front of that pit stall. So just a wonderful time. Super excited to get back here and talk to you about it, actually, because the fans, there are a lot of Ryan fans there, and you as you're walking out, people see the shirts and they're all like, "Oh yeah." But it's still, there are 36 other drivers or 30, so they're fans of other guys and stuff too. So it's, you can't get quite the full reaction. It's not like you're sitting at an NBA game and the crowd is for one team of the two, Yep. So it gets a little bit separated a little bit, but it was a great moment to be there live.
Yeah, definitely had to be. Like I said, I think there's kind of a lot of pent up emotion here, almost like when he won the 600 too. He ran out into the stands. He'd broken this winless streak. Since the 600, they had a pretty decent race at Sonoma. After that, though, the rest of the summer and leading up to this race, we haven't had a lot of really exciting things to talk about. They've had some mistakes along the way, some pit miscues. Like I said, overall execution hasn't been great until the playoffs started. But it was really great to kind of see it all to come together. And as I mentioned, I didn't mention these folks all being on the show just to name drop people. A lot of it is just, when you get to know some of these people and you get to know their backstories and how hard they're working, when you see those guys on TV spraying champagne, high-fiving, leaping off the pit wall in celebration, taking photos in victory lane, knowing that every single person that I mentioned works long hours, long weekends, travels all over the country, mostly for our entertainment, basically. You got to feel something for him. So to see Dave Nichols multiple times on TV spraying champagne, I said he's, on Facebook, he's living his best life. Like, it's awesome just to see things like that and know that their hard work is really paying off in getting their second victory of the year.
Think about it, Josh. We've talked to Josh a couple times. Josh has done some nice things for us even over these years, and kind of given us some behind the scenes stuff. And you can imagine that he's did all that for that many hours. And he changes batteries on the fly. He goes through 7, 8, 9 batteries during a race, the battery packs that go onto his thing, because he's talking so much and they're on that radio so much, and he executes it without you even knowing that it happened, because you're listening to him. We talk about Jonathan all the time, and we had Tony Palmer on. Jonathan actually helped set that up for us, and that's and you think about it, Tony was probably the one sitting there figuring out fuel mileage, working with how much gas can they put in, how many seconds of gas, once they've hooked it up, and the call on whether it's how many, and Jonathan, whether to take the tires here or there, and they did two 4-tire stops, during the caution break stages, and then when everybody's coming to pit road, and all those decisions that Jonathan had to do. And then he works all week long putting that car together, making sure that it will run the way it ran all day long, and do the things Ryan needs it to do, without having to make a lot of adjustments, because they got no time for adjustments on a lot of those pit stops, So you're right, getting to know all these guys, and you can't help but feel totally excited when everything gets put together the right way, and to help Ryan have what he needs, and then for him to pull off the move that he pulled off on the backstretch, was somebody playing chess versus some people playing checkers. The way he feathered his way underneath the 4 car, and yet in front of the 24 without putting anybody in danger. That's the fun part about it, is the move didn't look wild to the point where anybody had to swerve out of the way or make a move. Sometimes you'll see that happen on the backstretch, and somebody will have to kind of duck down to the line because it was too herky-jerky. He totally smooth move to the bottom to get in front of the 24, and then pretty smooth driving all the way around that last half lap to win the race. And like I said, I'm so excited, not only to see him win, but then for all those guys who put in all that hard work at Team Penske. We heard about a week or two ago that there was a big meeting there, and, people were, having, airing, I don't know what the meeting was about, but it was a team Penske meeting for all the teams. And looks like that some of whatever they talked about actually, helped them work that out.
So you just mentioned that move on the backstretch. We broke it down a little bit, talked about how important it was with the way he was taking and receiving and keeping the 24 in check. I mentioned at the top of the show, we've got some audio from Ryan's post-race interview and press conference. So that's the first thing he talks about here is how he worked with the 24 there, and talks a little bit about the victory. So let's listen to that.
I think the biggest thing was getting clear to the bottom down the backstretch in front of the 24 to get alongside the 4, and that made it to where, okay, now it's a drag race between he and I. And the biggest job too was making sure the 24 didn't get clear. So I kind of had a drag brake to make sure the 4 stayed outside the 24 to kind of make sure one of us won, and made sure the 24 couldn't jump outside of me, and made sure I had his help. So just a neat day, fun day. It's always fun to win these things, and you have to appreciate them because they're so hard to do, and we hung in there all day, and fun to drag race Kevin there at the end. I hate it had to be us to beat him at his final speedway race, but it was definitely fun to race with someone like that, especially coming down to the end where it gets pretty wild.
So Ryan mentions that again. He goes over the move with the 24 car. I alluded to it a little bit, but the 4 car eventually gets disqualified in post-race inspection. So, man, imagine if he did beat Ryan to the line. it's like one of those things. I talked with the folks in our Discord chat who were, totally elated with this victory, and were chatting all night long about, when that news came out. I'm like, man, what if the 4 had beat us? And by us, I mean the 12 team. What if the 24 had beat the 12 team? Like, how would we, or the 4 had beat the 12 team? How would we feel, an hour later getting the news that actually, Ryan wins, I mean, I think I'd still be excited. I'd be glad he'd get that, punch that ticket to the round of 8, all that. But I'm so glad he beat him to the line, because, man, that would have just been so weird. Unfortunate for Kevin. He loses that, goes all the way back. And what I think the penalty was, the fasteners for the windshield had come loose, and you have to keep them tight all race long. They've made some announcements already saying they're not going to appeal, though. Crew Chief Rodney Childers kind of took exception with it, saying, none of this was intentional, but they just kind of popped out as the race went, and they'll take a look at it. But definitely glad that Ryan, because it just, just fought off any kind of major controversy, Kevin winning in his last year. This is amazing. NASCAR DQs it. And then not only that, hands Ryan a victory, which is crucial to a guy that is below the cut line. Like, the controversy would have just been insane. So I'm glad we dodged all of that by Ryan making super smart moves out there on the track and taking the win himself. Next up here, we're going to hear from another friend of the show here, Crew Chief Jonathan Hassler, and what he had to say on the victory.
Yeah, just, obviously, I feel like over the last couple of years we've had a really good speedway program. I feel like we've been, in contention to win several of them. So, coming into the day, we thought we had a really good chance. We just needed to, and I told the guys this morning, we don't need to go out and do anything different. We just need to do what we've been doing. Execute, and we'll be in good shape. And they did that, and we were in position, and Ryan did a great job there at the end.
You can tell Jonathan really has that Midwestern hard work, business attitude. We just have to execute. We got to do what we got to do. And, his third trip to victory lane with Ryan Blaney, second in a points race. Got to feel excited for that guy.
Yeah, his he calls his guys Team 12, and he puts together these guys have been together, and we met Raymond Fox last year, actually, after one of the races. So, what they put together and what they bring to the track is just incredible, especially at super speedways. We know the qualifying efforts the last couple of years have always been there, but what Ryan is able to do maneuvering the car during the race is really incredible. And Daytona this year, the Daytona summer race this year, till things happened the way they did, that could have been a winning car too. So, as long as they kept it clean, and Josh definitely kept it clean all day, they're in pretty good shape.
Now, Roger Penske was in the house again. He was pretty active throughout the day on the radio, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he jumps in at the beginning, wishes him luck. Likes to come on once in a while and just, especially during a caution or something, and tell Ryan what a good job he's been doing. And, if there's something he sees, he might jump in there a little bit with, something he might see that you can't argue with that guy's experience in any kind of auto racing. So, anything that Roger can add during the day is definitely helpful.
Here's what Roger had to say post-race.
Ryan did a great job. He was doing a good race. He was beating himself up last week because of the speeding in the pits, but I said, let's forget that. And Jonathan gave him a great car, and certainly when you think about the Roush Yates horsepower, it didn't hurt us. You can see that today. So it was just a perfect execution, good pits, good strategy. And he was very calm, which is key for him. And during that middle part of the race, right, Jonathan, when we were a little bit behind, he stayed in the right lane and saving fuel, and at the end it worked out.
So, yeah, like you said, always great to hear from the captain. You could tell he was pretty pumped up. Some of the victory lane photos, he's got a huge smile on his face. I think a lot of people have noticed, and he kind of himself has had a kind of a sweet, I don't know how to describe it, like a sweet spot for Ryan. Like, I don't want to say he discovered Ryan, but with, Brad and running for his truck team, he brings Brian along. He's always been a big fan of his. Anytime Ryan's had some struggles throughout the years or didn't pick up a win or something like that, you could tell Roger just really likes Ryan as a person, Ryan as a driver. And he mentions, post-race that Ryan deserved this win. And I think he just saw how close he was to winning so much last year and just falling short of the championship 4 and then finally getting that win earlier this season and then now getting a multi-win season. So really good to see Roger at the track and looking forward to seeing him there as the races move on all the way until Phoenix. So one surprising thing that happened after Ryan crosses the finish line here and makes his way back around to the front stretch, he keys up the radio and says, and kind of is hesitant. He kind of says, "Guys, I think I'm going to do a burnout."
Yeah, can I do one? I think is the way he put it. I'm like,
yeah. And then he does it.
Yeah,
I'm in
like,
shock.
What's happening?
In shock. I immediately tweeted like, "OMG, a burnout!" And for all the people that, I don't care what level of Ryan Blaney fan you are, but he has not done a burnout, and found out his last burnout was in the truck series when he won a race at Bristol. That's the last time he's done a burnout in a NASCAR vehicle outside of burnout on the boulevard and some of those things they've done for All-Star Weekend or for championship or the banquet weekend or something like that. But after competition, he's basically done like a half Polish victory lap, got the flag, given it to the kid, or as Coke 600 ran into the stands and gave the flag to a kid eventually. But I mentioned this like pent up emotion from having such a tough summer stretch to finally, executing a race the whole way. I think even like he feels like he gave away an opportunity last week. Roger mentioned that in his clip there. So I think all of that emotion came out in him doing a burnout, and it wasn't like a super big long one, but it was a good one. The photos out there are amazing.
Yeah.
So anybody, I would just, peruse Twitter, Facebook, and Team Penske's stuff, and maybe save some of those photos to your photo album, because really cool to see. But what were your thoughts from the stands when you kind of see the smoke?
Yeah, we got totally blown away by it. Totally threw us off guard, and so people are going, "He's doing a burnout!" Like surprise, people know that he doesn't. But I heard him say that on the radio, and I'm like, I think he's going to do one. And it's like, you know what? With all the pent up emotion and the fact that knowing what this race does for the rest of the season, how it sets up the next 4 weeks at least, I go for it, And it was a modest one. He didn't go crazy,
So post race, Ryan kind of went into this. He describes the moment when he talked about saying he's going to do a burnout, and someone in the press corps actually, wasn't really familiar with it and poses that question: Why don't you do it?
I was debating whether to do a burnout or not. I usually don't do them, but I was really, really excited, so I did one. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. But now it's a special feeling, especially like I said earlier, when you can win here. It's really hard to do, and you have to appreciate those moments.
Why did you get burnout?
Oh, you don't know? Dale Inman pulled me aside one day, and he said, "Hey, you don't see the winner of the Kentucky Derby get off his horse and start beating the out of it." So. So that's why I don't do burnouts. Well, I didn't do a burnout after one race, and he was like, "I like how you don't do burnouts," and then he told me that story, and I was like, "Well, I'm definitely not." She might be mad at me for doing one and breaking our rule, but yeah, the Inman quote. Yeah, no problem.
So that's kind of a funny story. He's kind of told short versions of that before. Usually just mentions, I don't want to mess up the equipment. I just always thought it'd be cool to be. Ryan's a very old school guy, old school shirts and hats and old school celebration. But I don't think this is going to start a trend. I think this is maybe going to be saved for when he gets, really monumental victories. And for him, this where he was below the playoff cut line, and this punches his ticket to the next round. I think. I kind of like it every once in a while. It's good in moderation. I think I'll do it, and the press corps definitely really enjoyed that story.
It was good. It was a good story.
Saw a tweet from MRN and SiriusXM's Dave Moody earlier today that said, I'm paraphrasing, but basically, everyone always says these super speedway races are kind of wild cards and anybody could win, but often a lot of the same guys are winning these most often. For Ryan Blaney, that's true. 4 of his 9 career victories are now on drafting tracks, super speedways, between these 3 wins at Talladega, the win at Daytona in this form of racing. Ryan, I mentioned in our Discord chat with some folks, it's almost magical, or it's just every one of these races, unless he's taken out early in some fluke like he was in the Daytona 500 several 4 or 5 years ago, he finds his way to the front. He wins stages, controls the race. Now, this one was a little bit weird. He did win a stage, didn't necessarily control the race. He ran up front, but didn't lead a ton of laps. I think he was just kind of in the single digits on laps led. But that 12 car, no matter the old generation car, this new generation car, finds his way to the front every single time. And he kind of talked about that a little bit, about why he likes these drafting tracks and what his mindset is going into it. And I thought this was interesting.
People have two opinions on speedways. Either they love them or they hate them with a passion. And I kind of made the decision of, I'm going to love these places, and I'm going to accept if something bad happens to me here, right? If you get in a wreck, that's not your fault, right? You're just going to accept it and not stress out about that. And once you kind of put that in your head of you're just accepting that these things can happen here, now you can focus on trying to run well and win, right? You're not worried about all this stuff for coming here, disliking the track, like, oh, I can't stand being here, the speedway races are dumb, It's not really the right mindset to have. So I just kind of did that early on, and it's, benefited us mindset-wise coming to these places. And yeah, it means a lot to win here. I grew up watching Dad race here for a long time. I love the area. The fans here are spectacular, and being able to meet a bunch of people has been fun. And getting to know a lot of people, from the Speedway also has been amazing. And, just really fortunate to have good friends here that treat me like family. So, really and I think you appreciate these things more because it's so hard to win at these places. It's just such a up in the air thing. You never know if it's going to work out for you or not. So you have to really appreciate whenever you can win here, and it's really, really fortunate. We've been lucky enough to win here 3 times.
I've said this before, I think in a podcast before, that you get to be up in the front a lot more often in these things, and then people start to follow you and want you to be in the front. And it kind of reminds me of Dale Jr. And he's starting to get to some numbers at super speedways, and Dale Jr. was the same way. It was like you got used to seeing him up there, and other guys on the track trusted that Dale Jr. knew what he was doing. So the same thing. If you talk to 36 guys in the garage besides Ryan and ask them who they think is one of the better guys at it, they'll tell you Ryan. And during a race, they probably feel a little more comfort and ease knowing that he's out near the front than other guys, because sometimes, like we discussed earlier about this guy or that guy out in front and they look squirrely. Ryan is able to control a race sometimes from the front or the front couple rows in a manner that just doesn't seem as dangerous as other guys when they get out there. So, Dale Jr.'s, got many more years experience of doing it, but I think as time goes on, we're seeing more and more that Ryan drives quite well at super speedway, just like Dale.
Yeah, one thing I really liked that he talked about was the fact that, it's not lost on him what it means to win at Talladega. This is one of NASCAR's, it's not a crown jewel event, but it is one of the series' most historic tracks, well-known tracks. Talked about, in pop culture, has a following just by that movie that came out. So even people that don't follow the sport know what Talladega is. It's funny, early in the season, Ryan, before the spring race, which we both went to, was inducted into the Talladega the Talladega Walk of Fame, which is it's not a Hall of Fame, but it's like a Walk of Fame that's in the city, downtown Talladega, Alabama, which, it's not like a huge city or anything, but they have a park, and it's something that they've actually restarted within the last few years, that just kind of has several different drivers going all the way back to the early days up into the modern era. And people it was funny on the NASCAR posts about it, kind of questioned Ryan, who's this, 20-something guy? Why does he deserve to be in the Talladega Walk of Fame? And his numbers there are great. 3 wins now. Going into this race, he had back-to-back second place finishes where he was, if Michael McDowell in the fall race last year would have just stuck with him and pushed, Ryan probably wins that race over Chase Elliott. Bubba and Ryan didn't work too well together in the spring race. Ryan finishes second. Everything came together perfectly in this case, with the 24 actually sticking with him to the end and helping push him to the victory there. So, If he wasn't deserving in the spring, I think with his 3 victories now that I believe tied him with some big names out there, Allisons and Yarboroughs and such. So 3 wins at Talladega in the Cup Series, I think is pretty impressive. So the next time you're out there, if you want to stop by in downtown Talladega, Alabama, you can go and check out the Walk of Fame, and Ryan has a plaque there talking about it. Well deserved, I think. So, Steve, this has been a weird season. We went through last season. We mentioned it, I think, already in this show. Super consistent all year long. Lots of top 5s, lots of top 10s. Didn't pick up a points-paying win. Did win the All-Star race. Misses the championship 4, but just a tiny bit. Few points. Mm-hmm. Could have won Phoenix too. This year, this was only his 5th top 5 of the season, and 2 of those were wins. He has a decent amount of top 10s, but the way it's looking the rest of the year, he is going to hit some career lows. How do you judge the performance they had last year versus the performance they have this year, where they have the 2 victories? I mean, the wins have to mean so much more, right, than just the consistency is great. They could have had a chance to win the championship last year, but I think it almost shows you there's a lot of different avenues to get to the championship round.
Yeah, the peaking at the right time is more than anything else. You win that race early in the season, and it gives you that feeling that you're in the playoffs. You're in the playoffs. From that point forward, sometimes some of these teams will work toward what they have to do once they get to the playoffs. But really, it's more about peaking at the right time and coming together, like we talk about the different things with the crew and and so forth. Now, this is what's great about this is just like Joey last year. You win one within a round, and it sets up that whole next round. Or Joey last year wins one early on in the round of 8 and knows he's going to the championship 4. So same type of thing. You won this one. You're in the next 8. Peaking at the right time. Maybe you win one early in the next round. Take all the pressure off. You can win Vegas. Something like that. But that's really what it all comes down to, is getting to, once you're in the playoffs, and peaking at the right time. And then right now they have unfinished business compared to last year. That's the way I feel. Like they got some unfinished business that they want to attend to in the next 4 weeks. And let's see how they do in that round of 8.
Here's what Ryan said about the season so far.
Yeah, it's kind of been up and down. I feel like we were, really solid until winning in Charlotte, and then we kind of lost our way a little bit after the break, and just struggled to kind of find speed and put together races and making mistakes, whether it's my mistakes or pit road. And I feel like we've done a good job as the playoffs have started to kind of managing these races like we need to and kind of getting back on track. So yeah, it's kind of weird. But I feel like we had a lot more top 5s last year and contended for more wins probably, but didn't execute very good. And I feel like this year we've executed pretty good, especially the 2/3 point of this year, and that's something to be super proud of. And it's definitely shown that we've done a good job of believing in each other and just doing our job, and so those guys are awesome at that.
So from here, Steve, for the 5th time in his career, Ryan Blaney is headed to the round of 8. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Roval in a few minutes, but to jump ahead a little bit, you mentioned peaking at the right time. That's something that we haven't necessarily seen in the playoffs for Ryan Blaney in the past. Going in a couple of years ago, they won back-to-back races before the playoffs. Then they immediately, I think, had an issue at Darlington that set them back in the points, and they have an early exit. And last year, it seemed like every round was like by the skin of their teeth. There's mistakes and crashes, and cars had to be fixed, and drivers had to, Kurt Busch doesn't go out, Ryan doesn't even make the playoffs. I mean, he just was able to, because of their consistency and a lot of the points they built up over the year, even without the wins, kind of kept them going through in the rounds. I feel like you said, they kind of have some momentum here going into the round of 8. The only thing that concerns me a little bit maybe is the speed issue that they've kind of had. Maybe a little bit flicker of light is the fact at Texas. Even though they didn't necessarily have winning speed, they kind of had top 5 speed, at least enough to stay in people's way and hold those positions. But we do have tracks like Las Vegas and Homestead coming up that speed is going to be really, really important going into this round of 8. But if he can survive and get to Martinsville, which is statistically one of his best tracks and one of the places where they do need to finally put together a full race, I think they can go out and win the darn thing.
Yeah. Jonathan will tell you that all the mile and a halves are different, and it's really not what it used to be. You used to think, well, they go to a mile and a half, it's all the same. But no, they all are different now. And so setups are all different. So, what happens in a couple of weeks, Vegas and Homestead, will be really interesting to see what you said about speed. It might be better than we think. And, we've got basically an extra week to work on that too. Cause, we're going to go ahead and race the Roval this week and hopefully maybe get some points out of it. But, I'm sure that, the pressure being off now, they can actually start to look forward a little bit to that round of 8 and the things they have to do in that round.
Post-race, in the press conference, Ryan did talk about what they need to do during the playoffs and kind of talks a little bit more about execution and avoiding mistakes.
Yeah, I think just learning from mistakes. I feel like made mistakes. Last year I made 2 massive mistakes and kept us out of Phoenix, so I think learning from prior experiences is beneficial there. Obviously, you need your cars to be fast enough because it gets super tough, and these racetracks are, there's no super speedway, there's no road course. It's like traditional tracks, and then it gets super hard. I mean, when everything resets, you have guys that have tons of points. Today helped us out a little bit, but a couple guys have way more playoff points than us. So, no, I think if we can just learn from past mistakes and have our cars fast and just, not mess up, really. I mean, you have to perform. So, I think just believe in each other and continue to work. I feel like our cars haven't been quite the speed they needed to be to compete with maybe like the 5 or, the 11's been fast. But I think we're still working, and it's going to be a big shot in the arm for us. So I'm excited to see what we have for them when we unload in Vegas.
Yeah, totally echo those thoughts. I think a shot in the arm is a good way to put it. This could give them the momentum that they need headed into this final round before the championship 4. And I don't know, I'm more of a glass half full kind of guy right now. Sometimes this point in the season, I lean a little bit toward negativity or worrying, but to see everything start to come together here, get a victory, get some positive momentum in their direction. And like you said, maybe we'll be surprised a little bit by the speed they unload with over the next 4 or 5 races.
Yeah, it'd be really, really interesting because when you get to the round of 8, you basically got to beat 4 guys. That's what you're thinking about, is beating 4 guys. If 3 guys within the playoffs win the 3 races, then you got to beat, the other 4 on points. But he's not going to be that far behind them on points. He just gained 6 points this week. So when they reset the points, he'll have 14 or something like that. When they reset the points. So he's not going to be that far below a cut line right off the bat. Within week 1, he can get there. Be interesting to see if somebody from outside the playoffs wins 1 or 2 of those races too, because that'll change things too and make it more open to guys making it on points. But we, he alluded to what happened last year, and we don't really have to rehash totally all of that. But know that they had what it took last year. Even though they did not win a race last year, they had what it took to get to the championship 4. And right now, being the only one in this round of 8, there's nothing but everybody at Team Penske looking at what to do to help that 12 car, and we saw the 22 and the 2 help within the race this past weekend, and we'll see things in practice and in qualifying in the next weeks to come, where that 22 and 2 will do things, and they'll work on things, and maybe there'll be a setup thing, and they'll be able to change something out. You're going to see nothing but that full effort to try and help Ryan and Jonathan get what they need out of that car.
So let's take a look at the NASCAR Cup Series playoff standings, and happy to report something that we have not seen since late May, early June here, is that Ryan Blaney is near the top of the standings because of that victory they just scored at Talladega Superspeedway. So locked into the next round are the 24 of William Byron and the 12 car of Ryan Blaney. Now here's where the points pop into here. Denny Hamlin is plus 50 to the cut line. Christopher Bell is plus 22. Chris Buescher is plus 19. Martin Truex Jr., the regular season champ, who's continued to struggle in this round of the playoffs as well. A little bit better than he was going into the cutoff race at Bristol. He's plus 17. Kyle Larson, plus 15. And this is where it gets sketchy. Brad Keselowski, who got in that accident at Talladega with the 42 car, he did win a stage and got a playoff point, so it helped him a little bit. But Brad Keselowski is in the 8th position, just plus 2 to the cut line. Again, this is a round of 12, so keep that in mind. In 9th, Tyler Reddick is minus 2. Bubba Wallace, minus 9. Bubba had a great couple of string of races going on here. They just did not execute at all at Talladega, and that really hurt that team. So they're minus 9 to the cut line now. Ross Chastain got caught up in that unfortunate incident early in the race when the 47 car ran out of fuel and everybody got bunched up on the outside. Ross went from above the cut line going into Talladega to now minus 10 points. And a disastrous round continues for the 8 car and Kyle Busch here, who is in a must-win situation going into the Roval for sure at minus 26 points to the cut line. So those are the 12 drivers still competing in the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. But Reddick, Wallace, Chastain, Busch, all below the cut line. Keselowski just 2 points above it there heading into the race at the Roval. But as I said, Ryan Blaney is up there in the 2nd position right now. With locked in with that victory, picked up 6 playoff points, 5 with the win, 1 with the stage win. So that's going to help him going into the next round, the round of 8. Most likely will start that round unless he wins the Roval, which he is a past winner there. Unless he wins the Roval, is most likely going to go into the round of 8 below the cut line, but hopefully by only maybe 10 points at most if they have a good weekend next week. So, congratulations again to the 1-2 team, Ryan Blaney, Jonathan Hassler, everybody else at Team Penske that made that happen. I could just go on forever. I love these win episodes, but we do have a couple more things to take care of business-wise the rest of the way. And I'm sure some folks that are deep into our Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League have been itching this whole episode so far to get an update on where everything stands. And we're going to start that by taking a look at what our lineups were for Talladega. Myself, Team Blaney host Adam, my team started Joey Logano, got me 24 points. Eric Almirola, the pole sitter, got me 20. Brad Keselowski, unfortunately, only got me 15, but thankfully did win that stage, got me a little bit more points. Teammate Austin Cindric, man, had an up and down day for sure, was a lap down at one point, I think due to a speeding penalty, I think on pit road. Rebounds for 5th place finish and gets me 37 points. Ryan Blaney, the winner, ranked 2nd in points earned on the weekend, I think just behind the 24 car, 50 points. I had Austin Dillon in the garage. Did not fare well in the featured matchups. I had Ryan over Kyle Busch. That was right. I had Bubba over Tyler Reddick. That was wrong. I had Keselowski over Larson. That was wrong. I had Chastain over Martin Truex Jr. That was wrong. So I ended up with just 156 points total and 24th in points earned for the weekend at Talladega. Now, you didn't probably have the opportunity to swap people in and out of the garage. You're probably a little bit more preoccupied with what was happening at the race, and I don't remember what Wi-Fi standards were like there. But
they weren't bad, actually.
That's good. So, but what did your team look like going into this weekend?
Yeah, I had Bubba Wallace, Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski, Ryan, and then Austin Cindric. I don't know why. I just kind of decided he was starting up near the front, that he'd be up there to help, and he did. But Brad finishing 32nd really kind of hurt there. I had Joey in the garage, so if I would have swapped that out when I could have, it would have been an extra like 9 points. So it's nothing like huge. Where I really lost out was I only made 10 bonus points on the selections. I had Ryan over Kyle Busch, and the other 3 I had the guy who finished lower. Bubba lost to Tyler, Brad lost to Kyle Larson, and Ross lost to Truex. So yeah, that's where, that's 30 points there that, just did not get. But you know what? I don't care. this week after this week of, I really, I said something to my wife at one point. Oh, I should check my fantasy team after it was over. I'm like, I should just check it to see what happened, because I couldn't remember who I picked, especially watching what we watched. So I'll get back to it this week at the Roval. We'll figure it out. We'll get some points together this week.
So Mez 12 ended up in a four-way tie for the 34th position in points earned from Talladega with 144 points. Again, I was 24th, 156 points earned. So let's take a look at the top 10, and that's actually going to start out with a two-way tie for 9th. Go Larson, Blaney's Daisy, 186 points, and 8th, Blaring Idiots, 190. Tie for 6th here between our friend of the show in Discord, Jordan Daniels, and my wife, Rogers T. 194 points earned. Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing, two-time champion of the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League, starting to come back on strong here in the playoffs. I think they have a ways to go to get back up there in the overall standings. 5th position for Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing, 195 points earned. 4th, Glitterbugs, 198. 3rd, the Prime Minister 3, 200. 2nd, NASCAR Nut 12, 215. And leading the way is Fike 21 in the 1st position, 221 points earned at Talladega. Now, let's take a look at the overall standings, let's look at the playoff standings in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. And let's take a look at you. Mez 12, 12th position, tied for 12th along with JD Racing at 961 points. So you have fallen out of the top 10 here, but you're still pretty close. In the 10th position, Blaney's Daisy, 972. In 9th, Zero Schlitz Given, 974. Tie for 7th here, Team Blaney host Adam and Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing, 980 points. Three-way tie for 4th here, Moose Hunter, 1960, Go Larson, and Rogers T, 983 points. So the Rogers household is on fire in the playoffs. Both of us sit in the top 10 here. 3rd, Blaring Idiots, 985. 2nd, Whip Wilson, 1,011 points. And leading the way, our winner from the week is also the overall leader in the playoff standings, Fike 21, 1,037 points. Now, here's where it all matters. The overall standings. So these are points earned all year long in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. I'm going to have to take a look. I'm still hanging out in the 34th position. Team Blaney host Adam, 5,589 points. Mez 12, holding down the 15th position, 5,812 points. Now let's take a look at the top 10 in the overall standings. Christian Dana, 10th, 5,868. 9th is Alyssa C., 5,871. 8th is Whip Wilson, 5,875. 7th is Eric D15, 5,929. 6th is Penske Fan 24, 5,949. 5th is Blaring Idiots, 5,965. 4th is Fike 12, 5,968. 3rd is Go Larson, 6,011. 2nd, Factory of Sadness 6 has fallen out of the lead. This is a major development. A few bad weeks in a row here for Factory of Sadness 6, and they have lost the lead, 6,107 points. Blaney's Daisy is now the leader in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League, 6,109 points, just 2 points ahead. Man, this is getting tight coming down the stretch here between Blaney's Daisy, Factory of Sadness 6, and I'll even say Go Larson has an outside chance here. So this is going to be really interesting to follow the rest of the way. If you guys follow us on social media, give us a shout out. Let us know who you are. We're rooting for y'all. That's all I'll say.
This week is talk about scramble. This week here, depending on how many usage you have left, because now we're past 5 races. So if you use somebody up for all 5, you're done with them. But what happens during this race, especially since they're bringing back the cautions to the stage breaks, who's racing for the win versus who's racing for stage points. And you may want to set your lineup accordingly. Hopefully you can read a couple articles and find out what some of these guys' game plans are, because somebody may be racing just for stage points, and if they're doing that, they might gain 15 points during the 2 stages, and then still get like a top 20 finish and rack up a bunch of points. Otherwise, if you pick the guy you think is going to win the race, that's great, but he may not race for stage points at the end of the stages. He's setting himself up. He might pit before the end of a stage to set himself up for later in the race where he's actually out in front, which may get him the points for winning. But if he didn't get any stage points, the guys who got stage points might pass him. So really interesting this week to look at your lineup based on those 2 factors, especially playoff guys and what they might try to do to get above that cut line.
So let's jump into that discussion of the weekend. kicking it off with our NASCAR on TV report for the Charlotte Motor Speedway road course, better known as the Roval. Will this be the last year of the Roval? I think we're going to find out in a couple of days here. It seems like the NASCAR Cup Series schedule will be coming out soon. So kicks off this weekend, Saturday, October 7th, noon Eastern time, the NASCAR Cup Series qualifying at the Roval. Now, note that this is going to start on the NBC Sports app at noon, and then it's going to be joined a half hour later, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time on USA. So a little bit weird. I'm not sure what the disconnect is there or what's going to be on early on, but so that's going to probably soccer. So it's going to start on the NBC Sports app at noon. You're not going to miss too much. You might miss Group A practice, but 12:30 p.m. Eastern time on the USA Network. If you don't have the NBC Sports app, you can catch qualifying. Followed by 3 p.m. Eastern time, the NASCAR Xfinity Series Drive for the Cure 250 at the Roval. That will be on NBC. And then Sunday, the big race, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, the NASCAR Cup Series Bank of America Roval 400, again on NBC. I mentioned the rest of the way, all of the Cup races are on NBC, the main network, all the way through the championship race at Phoenix. Let's take a look at Ryan Blaney's stats when it comes to the Roval. Everybody knows, got that victory in the very first year of the race, put himself in position, was running great, running third when Truex and Jimmy Johnson got into each other on the front stretch chicane. Ryan Blaney slides through, and I say slide because he was sideways coming out of the chicane, holds it together, steals the victory. Going into last year's race, he had 4 straight top 10 finishes, 1st, 8th, 5th, 9th, and you just had a great discussion about fantasy points and the way these drivers play this race. We didn't have those stage breaks with cautions earlier in the season. They've decided to bring them back to the Roval after a couple lackluster, some people thought lackluster road course races where the fields got spread out. So Ryan Blaney in this race last year was desperate for points. He and teammate Joey Logano flipped the stages, or I don't know if that's flipping the stage or not. They didn't flip. They stayed out, got points early on in the race. The next gen car is extremely hard to pass with on road courses. They were stuck in the back the rest of the way, finished 26, but with the points that they earned, they ended up transferring on into the next round of the playoffs. So that strategy was really important for them at that time. And for me in the stands, didn't create a very exciting race because I was a little sad watching them run in the back. But with all of that, Ryan has an average start of 10.8, an average finish of 9.8 at the Roval, 1 win, 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s.
Yeah, like I said, now Ryan this week could run for trying to win a stage. I mean, if they're in the right position, doing that might be worth that extra point or two for the playoff points. They may try to race for the win so that you can get that 5 extra points. Kind of hard to tell right now what their thinking is. But if you are Christopher Bell, who's 22 above, Bushler, who's 19 above, Truex, who's 17 above, or Larson, who's 15 above the cut line, guarantee you those 4 cars will race for stage points. Because really, truthfully, if they accumulate enough stage points in both the stages, a guy like Bell could almost crash out in the 3rd stage, because if he's gotten 18 or 20 stage points, he'll be that far above the cut line and that far above all the other guys where he won't have to worry about it. And the thing about that is, guys like Reddick, Wallace, Chastain especially, will be trying to race for the win. So you're going to see of those guys, 3 or 4 going one way, 3 or 4 going the other way on it. And it'll leave a bunch of stage points for a lot of guys who aren't even playoffs, at that point. What's going to be interesting is a guy like Larson can do this. And somewhere along the line, somehow, if he's that good, and he sometimes is, he'll win a stage, finish high, stay out and win the 2nd stage. And then at the end of the race, he's running in the top 5. He's one of those guys that all of a sudden will just maximize everything he can out of the race and get himself up in there. Things like that, you got to kind of look out and see who's going to do what when you're putting your fantasy team together.
So Ryan Blaney overall on road courses in his career has an average finish of 14.4. Prior to this season, that average finish was much lower. And quite honestly, in the next gen era, I don't even want to do the math to tell you what that average finish is, but I'll name them out here. He started off great, and then it got really bad, and then in the last couple races, it's gotten back to kind of where he was in the previous generation car. So we're going to go back to 2022 when they debuted the next-gen car. These are just, I'm not going to necessarily name off the tracks, but these are finishes on road courses. 6th, 6th, 11th, and here's where it took a turn. 26th, 24th, 26th, 21st, 31st, and then the last two races at the Indy Road Course in Watkins Glen, 13th and 9th. So things started to come together a little bit there. Worth mentioning, I think, one of those races at the Indy Road Course in 2022, Ryan was in position to possibly win, got punted, so that was the reason for that. But in 2023, the road course package with Team Penske as a whole, even Austin Cindric, which this is like his wheelhouse, has struggled on the road courses. We did see a glimmer of light, like I said, kind of back into where his average is, 13th and 9th, the last two road course races. So past winner here at the Roval, as we mentioned already. They might have the opportunity here. If they're not worried about getting stage points, as you said, they can pit early, flip the stages, try to position themselves for the wins. Because for Ryan and the 12 team specifically, yeah, maybe being able to race early on to pick up 1 or 2 playoff points by winning stages, I think going for the win and potentially picking up 5 more playoff points is more important, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be a great way to cap off the round. Just go out and get it. And with all these guys doing different things, he's not competing with as many of the guys, to tell you the truth. Like I said, half of those guys are going to try to race for stage points. Well, you're not competing with them for the win. So I kind of throw the Roval out though as a road course because it's kind of the hybrid that it is, and there's a lot about speed once they come up onto the track going into turns 1 and 2 and all the way down the backstretch to the chicane. So sometimes, it is a road course in a way, but because they use so much of the banking and get the car up to speed back there, and then even though they go through that chicane, they go through it at a pretty high rate of speed, and then once again they're using the banking in 3 and 4. What's interesting about this too is that the restart zone is going to change for this race also. So they're not going to be like coming to a flying restart like they were doing going into the whatever they called the turn 1 there.
Heartburn turn at one point.
Heartburn turn. Yeah, it was
Tums or something.
Yeah. I think they're going to use the chicane and you do a restart zone within that chicane. So that should bring back to racing again and not, like I said, not worried about anybody punting anybody going into turn 1, because a lot of guys would do that. It wasn't just somebody missing the breaking point. There was a lot of like, I'm on the inside of this guy, so I'll use this guy. He can go over there and I'll make the turn. So hopefully there'll be a lot less of that and a lot more just regular racing through the turns and through all up onto the banking.
So we mentioned the playoff cut line a little bit earlier. Ryan's great position, already advanced, pressure's off for this race. They can go out and go for the win if they want. 4 guys here that are below the cut line: Tyler Reddick -2, Bubba Wallace -9, Ross Chastain -10, Kyle Busch -26. 3 of these 4 drivers have won on the road courses in the past, including Reddick, Chastain, and Busch. Bubba Wallace has not. He has improved a little bit on road courses. Brad Keselowski, again, just +2 to the cut line, and you talked about Kyle Larson and what their strategy could be and what they've run there in the past at +15. Anybody else below that cut, Reddick, Wallace, Chastain, Busch, stand out to you as somebody that could maybe pop up? I don't even want to say steal a victory, pop up and get that victory and bump somebody else out that is above the cut line right now in kind of dramatic fashion going into this cutoff race.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you've got, if you race for points with some of the other guys, you're all looking to get above Brad, basically. Larson being 15 above the line, for some of the guys, for Kyle Busch, that's almost a 40-point jump, and he's not going to get that many points on, Brad unless Brad crashes early on in the race, So, and if Brad's doing a point racing strategy, if he's ahead of any of those guys, or if he works well with Buescher, his teammate, he might be able to work it out and force some of those guys to try and go for the win later in the race. But, Chastain's the one guy that's the wild card to me. He's the guy that can go out and win one of these things. Once again, I'm not sure what the strategy is. I mean, is that what they go for? I mean, he's only 10 below the cut line. He's looking up at Brad too. It's the way this is, when you look at it on the paper, everybody's looking at Brad. Can we pass Brad? Pass the other guys below the line, but pass Brad, because from Larson through Truex, Buescher, Bell, if they gain enough stage points early in the race, they could have a bad race. Somebody pointed out one of the shows, I think it was on the teardown. I think they were talking about, wouldn't it be funny if Truex finished like 28th and still made the next round, but that could happen because he gets a couple stage points in each stage and he clears everybody else. The only thing that really could wreck the day for anybody above the cut line is a crash early in the race.
So, one of the best things about that Blaney victory at Talladega is, man, they were going to be in the middle of this mess. He most likely was not going to leave Talladega above the cut line. If he did, it was going to be just by a couple of points. So if he doesn't win the race, man, it's so great to not have to worry like we did pretty much every cutoff race last year and go through this discussion, because we would have been right in the middle of this. I'm fairly certain. So, so my guy here, I think Tyler Reddick, he's gotten it done in an RCR car. He's gotten it done in a 2311 car on the road courses. So I think Reddick might be the one that can punch his ticket to the next round, and people need to watch out for that 45 car after that, because going to a place like Las Vegas, going to a place like Homestead, those tracks are right into that driver's wheelhouse, and he could easily leapfrog into the championship 4 after that. So I would have to say I do not necessarily want to see Tyler Reddick advance here, because that's a great Toyota car with a lot of speed. They've just had execution problems when it comes to some problems on pit road, leaving wheels loose, penalties. He's put himself in some bad positions on the track as well. So, but I'm looking at Tyler Reddick this weekend to be a driver below the cut line that could come out and win. You also have Chase Elliott hanging out there. He's run really strong the last several weeks, just hasn't been able to win. He's won this Roval race in the past in dramatic fashion, going from the back to the front. So I wouldn't be shocked if the 9 car goes to victory lane.
So great there too. I think it was one of the MRN guys this weekend interviewing him pre-race, and they were all like, oh, well, not being in the playoffs. And Chase went on for about 8 minutes to correct him. Chase Elliott is still in the playoffs. Yes. He's not in the drivers' playoffs. He is in the owners' championship playoffs, and he's taking it seriously because that's where the money is paid out. So if he can make the championship 4, that's a couple $100,000 more than
Larson did last year,
7th
same
or 8th.
position.
Right. So don't count him out of anything this week. I'm not exactly sure because the owner's points doesn't show up on the NASCAR app very well, but they show him above the cut line, I believe, there. So don't count him out of anything in these next couple races, because he's racing for his own championship. It's not the trophy that the winning driver gets, but that owner really appreciates the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of difference it could make, depending on where they finish. So he actually is in a really good spot in the owner's standings. He's in the 4th position right now, 56 points back of the leader, but the guy back there in 12th, which is the 8 car, 102 points back. So he's, I would say, all but locked into the next round. So, like you said, that was a big deal last year. You have to remember Ryan Blaney was not in the owner standings because the 45 car made it still with the points in the win from Kurt Busch. So the 12 didn't make it. So they were the ones that were out. The 5 car made it into that, and they made it all the way to the championship 4 in owner standings. Obviously they didn't win. So I guess you're right. That's worth correcting. That's worth mentioning. I know not a lot of fans care, but the team owners care for sure. They totally care. And this was a question I was about to ask you. We're 5 for 5 where playoff drivers have won the playoff race. Are we due now for a non-playoff driver to win a race? Somebody like Daniel Suarez, maybe on a road course, or
And McDowell, I mean, he was a playoff driver, but he's out now. McDowell could. Alex Bowman's looking for a win. I mean, Justin Haley ran really well at the Chicago street course. Now, it took some strategy to get them up front, but they could also use strategy to get up front here. And once he was in clean air, did really well. A lot of people mentioned that the inner course at the Roval was about the closest thing they had to the Chicago street course. Now, obviously, when they got out on the oval, it was totally different, but I think you're right. There's some guy, Chase Briscoe, has shown some speed in the past. He has been good on road courses in the past. Has made some mistakes though at the end of some of those things. So I think you're right. There's a possibility here. You know, man, Daniel Suarez needs something. 54 car Ty Gibbs. He's another one that could run up front in this race too. So several guys. And like you said, with the stage breaks being brought back, it brings that flipping strategy into this thing. And I guess we'll never know. I've already said it, you know, just take that deep breath, sigh of relief here that Ryan's not really caught up in this mess. Yeah. They can run their own race, do what they have to do. Hopefully probably try to go out there and go for a win. And man, I just love for them to get a top 10, to get back-to-back top 10s on road courses here after the ninth that he had at Watkins Glen on the last road course race, and it'd be great to finish the season out strong after really struggling on these types of tracks early on. So, Steve, that was an action-packed episode. I thought it was really awesome. We could pull in some of that audio from Ryan's press conferences and kind of talk back and forth and react to some of the things that he said, that Roger said, that Jonathan said. Listening to that spotter audio from the last lap from that victory is one of my favorite things, going all the way back to, I think, the first time when somebody queued up that Michigan win, then his Daytona win, now this win. I mean, it's just so cool to hear those guys work as a team and go to victory lane and just hear that emotion in their voices after they win. So these are, as I said earlier, these are my favorite episodes to do, and I hope we have many more of them ahead.
Yeah, hopefully, you know, if you're new to the episode, new to the podcast, because usually after a victory we get some newer people to listen. Stay with us. You know, subscribe to it. Whatever service you're using. We're planning on hopefully having a guest maybe later this week even. So, you know, subscribe, pay attention, look out for the possibility of that happening. Like I said, we've gotten some nice communication with the people at Penske and some of the team members, and we can find out some things that hopefully enhance what you see and listen to every weekend on the races. And we're excited to bring that to you if this is like one of your first times listening to us.
Yeah, go back and listen to some of the old episodes. If you scroll through your podcast app, it's noted when we've had a guest in a special interview. We've interviewed, as I said, lots of really great people, from crew chiefs to tire folks to engineers, mechanics, you know, spotters, other people in the industry. A lot of those interviews, especially from this year, can be found on our YouTube channel. If you search for Team Blaney, you'll find our YouTube channel, and there's a special set of interview videos out there where it's actually video. A lot of our audio episodes from this year are also on YouTube too, if you don't have a podcasting app that you use regularly. But you can find us out on all of the major podcast apps. And like Steve said, like, share, review, subscribe. We appreciate everybody listening, and we just hope, you know, Steve and I are big fans. Say it at the top of the show, this show is by fans for fans. We try to give you as much, you know, insight, analysis, you know, explaining why a pit stop was good, explaining why a pit stop was bad, some things that TV might miss. You know, we spend a lot of time analyzing the races and just want to give you, if you're, you know, that next level fan, just that extra bit of information that maybe you're missing on the broadcast, because, you know, they got 36, 38 cars they have to follow every week. They can't always tell you what's going on with Ryan Blaney from lap to lap, but that is something that you can get from us on the Team Blaney podcast every week. So thank you everyone for tuning into this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. If you'd like to learn more about myself or co-host Steve, really encourage you to go back and listen to our very first episode that explores our Blaney racing fandom. You can interact with us on Facebook, X at Team Blaney, and on Instagram and TikTok at team.blaney. And finally, we'd like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation, established in 2018. This organization supports causes like the Alzheimer's Association and UPMC Sports Medicine through fundraisers, events, and membership in the Blaney Bunch Fan Club. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org. Follow them on Facebook, X, Instagram, all of their very active social media channels.
Yeah. Make sure you follow them. I'm not going to leak anything totally, but make sure you follow them. There might be some really cool things coming up in the weeks to come from them. They always put out some, nice stuff. They deal with Flag and Anthem. So if you don't follow Flag and Anthem, follow Flag and Anthem, because you can find some exclusive merchandise of Ryan Blaney's through the Flag and Anthem. And they actually help the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation with some merchandise there too. So yeah. Keep an eye on the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation handles on all the social medias. There might be some really cool things coming up soon.
So, for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Good night, Brussels. Check out the TikTok.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.